Welcome everybody to a ECAC's monthly webinar. I want to welcome our member partners as well as any guests that have joined us today. Today's webinar is a two-part series focusing on AI in respect to contact center operations, what works, and what to look for when deciding on a solution. Next month, we will discuss more on the legislative concerns and guardrails that the federal and state governments are contemplating. For those who don't know, ECAC is a trade association focused on advocating and educating lawmakers and regulators on the effects regulations have on businesses who engage with their customers. Businesses need representation to make sure their concerns are heard by those making the laws, and ECA does this for its member partners. I don't want to take too much time away from what will be an excellent discussion today, so please reach out to us and let's have a conversation about becoming a member. We will send out a recording of the session to all participants, and that will include more information of how ECA can support your business. So with that, I'm going to introduce our moderator today, Jerry Christensen of 46 Labs. Jerry is an ECAC board member, as our other two speakers are as well. So Jerry, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Stuart, for that kind introduction. As Stuart mentioned, I'm a board member of the ECAC, and I am pleased today to be the moderator for this session. We have a couple of gentlemen that are going to be on the panel today, Jim Ayub and Fred Stacy, and I'll give a brief introduction for them and also go over a few housekeeping items. So Jim Ayub is an industry veteran with 35 years of experience in the BPO industry. He is also president of ETS Labs and chief revenue officer for ECAC. And ECAC, I know myself from direct experience. I've actually worked with them. They do, among other things, audio analysis. So if you are a BPO, a contact center, and you need to have the audio analyzed in various ways, they can do that for you. That's just one of the things that they can do. And I know that from her firsthand experience. Fred Stacy is also with us, and he is the CEO of Cloud Tech Gurus. They are a technology services distributor for the contact center. And as I mentioned, Fred and Jim are both experts in the contact center arena. And they're going to be talking about the integration of AI, ROI analysis, what's working, what's not working, and providing a lot of valuable recommendations. As housekeeping, they have a slide deck, which, as Stuart mentioned to you, will be shared with everybody that is part of this session. And we will be taking some questions as we go, so please feel free to give us your questions. We will try to answer some of them as we go, but we're also going to save some time at the end for Q&A. So that way we can do a bit of a wrap up. And if there's any questions that we didn't get as we go along, we'll cover those. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Jim.
Thank you so much, Jerry. I appreciate it. We're going to have some fun today. I'm with my good friend, Fred, and we're very passionate about what we do. So hopefully at the end of this 30 minutes or so, you're going to learn a few things you may not have known, and also be able to ask a lot of questions that hopefully we can answer for you. So let's talk about this current market of these AI service categories. Because as Fred and I have been together for a long time, everything's AI now. It's crazy. Everything's got AI. So let's talk about some of them. So you have your customer-facing AI, right? Those are your bots that you know about, the voice, the digital things, the accent neutralization, which we're, big fans of because it's actually letting a lot of the offshore centers really do much better than they did. Then you have your agent support systems, right? Your co-pilots, and I use Claude, so everybody knows Claude's my favorite go-to. Perplexity, Poe, Gem, I have them all, but there's different use cases for each one. My passion, analytics and intelligence. What can you really talk about speech analytics versus insights? Anybody can tell you yes and no's. So really the cool stuff about some analytics platforms nowadays is you can get context out of them, right? And then of course, the other one we talk about is this operational infrastructure, which I don't know why I have it last, but it's funny because some people don't understand about compliance. You can Google today all the companies that have class action lawsuits against them because they took your data and uploaded it into a ChatGPT, which is a no-no. So has to be secured, has to be in your own. Those LLMs have to be not training other engines. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But then I'm going to pass it over back to my buddy Fred. I think we're going to talk about this next piece, which is, Fred, so many people come to me And when we show these great technologies, they all believe they can build it themselves. So I wanted to give that introduction to you because I hear it constantly. Build versus buy. Talk to us about it.
Yeah. Before I jump into that, can we go back to the last slide real
Absolutely.
quick? Something I want to call out. I think it's important to understand the taxonomy because, like Jim said, everybody's talking about AI, right? What does that mean, right? It's like talking about, the internet. It's such a broad category. It's ridiculous. But one of the things I want to call out in particular is the operational infrastructure, and not just from a compliance standpoint, but an actual functionality standpoint. And there's one that does not look like the others on the operational, and that's knowledge management. Knowledge management and not knowledge management systems is because, as we all know, in contact centers, our knowledge exists all over the place. And this is such a key component to any artificial intelligence technology. But along with that, your processes, your compliances, data governance. So when you're looking at this taxonomy, I think it's important to understand there's a lot of different things when someone says AI in our space, but these are all the four primary areas, and there's a lot more than this. We've got 58 categories of different technologies and resources, but these are the primaries. So on to build versus buy. This is always a fun conversation. The reality of building technology today, it's very possible. Everybody knows it. You've got custom GPT by OpenAI. You've got access to all the tools inside Claude. Various different tools are there for anybody to build. And this is one of the scariest things for me that keeps me up at night is there's the ability today for any IT team to custom develop, pull in LLMs, push data to those LLMs. And actively start training open models, meaning that to public models they haven't segmented, haven't built a PLLM. They're pushing data, and there are active lawsuits out there on this exact thing where people literally fed PII from a contact center practice into an open and training model. So build versus buy. There are some things today that I think every organization should be working on. One is building your team, your organization towards what I call, AI maturity, AI enabled company. There's a lot of different ways you can phrase it, but most companies are going to end up with an AI practice inside them. They're going to have resources, security, IT, but then there's building a platform. And this is a whole different conversation. Because when you build something, this goes back to CPaaS, in the early days, Jim. I don't know if you remember this, and Gary. When you build CPaaS, you not just have to build it to deploy it, but you then have to maintain it. You have to support it, and you have to do ongoing maintenance, policy, security, all the things that comes with basically building a software platform. And this is even more accelerated because LLMs, they bring to life all your bad data, all your bad processes, all your lack of governance, lack of security. And when you look at in this example, and this is from yours, Jim, right?
Yep.
This is a cost analysis to build a conversational analytics platform. And when you look at over a 5-year period, a $3.5 to $5 million cost versus 900 to $1 million, and I think you're being generous on this, because there's a lot more hidden cost to developing in-house, supporting, implementing, and ongoing. So there are certain things that I do recommend companies that we work with to build, for sure, but none of it is customer facing.
Yep.
And
That's a I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's actually a valid point. A lot of the things you're doing for yourself, and by the way, the cost in here, if you think about one thing that you forgot about, is don't forget all the tokens you need to actually process the LLMs, which they all think it's free. What do you mean? I can go into ChatGPT and have my queries. Yeah. And then it shuts down and tells you you've exceeded it. And I think that's another cost that people aren't even thinking about.
Well, the cost per token, the data storage movement, if you don't
Yep.
architect it properly, your costs go significantly up. And then there's building for the future. Right now we're at a per token cost that seems to be going down. But what everybody fails to realize is the cost of wattage per token right now is we haven't hit that cap yet, and we're not building power fast enough. So there is a point where the cost per token could significantly go up. But these are all kind of like the underlying of if you don't know how to build on this stuff and you don't your team, everybody can go out and write a prompt. I mean,
Yep.
and the prompt windows, the context windows are getting bigger, so you can get more complex. But do you really know how to architect a system, and are you thinking about this for the long term? And when it comes to customer facing, I don't know about you, Jim, but unless I've got a professional team that knows how to build, knows how to do the security and the prompt injections and to scrape PII prior to loading it, knows how to segment, small, mid, and large models. I'm not, I don't want any of my team building anything customer facing, especially around voice. And for all those reasons and then some.
Yeah, no, good. Yeah, absolutely good point. When you think about it, like, remember, at ECAC, I built Q eval, God, in 2003 internally for us. And then the functionality got so good, people started asking us for it. And then remember, you and I talked about this about a year ago. And what did I have to do? I had to hire an expert to make the GUI interface to make it better, because it definitely was not customer facing at that point, because I built everything on functionality for us, but it worked so well. And to your point, I had to go hire a professional just to make things look better, because I'm not a designer by any means.
Yeah. I mean, building a scalable software is not for the weak or me. Yeah, it's and especially when it comes to something that impacts compliance,
Yep.
could impact your business as being caught up in class action lawsuits. These are things that you just the build versus buy conversation is something that actually in artificial intelligence, I believe we're going to continue to have. Unlike, CPaaS is kind of, we've all decided, right? There are certain companies that want to build and own it and build it into their own CRM or ERP, and that's okay. But those are the like 1%ers, right? As far as the overall market share, most people have gone to traditional CCaaS. All the players we're familiar with. Whereas with this one, I do truly believe that internally, most organizations of any decent size will build some tools.
Yep. And they should. And by the way, Monday I'm releasing I just wrote my blog for Monday. It's about APIs, because the one thing I found, and some of these companies are building stuff, they're not even thinking about connecting it to everything else. Nobody wants to go in and log into 7 different platforms anymore.
Yeah.
The technology exists, as you and I talk about all the time. You can tie all this stuff together, but if you build it without that understanding, you're going to need the webhook. You're going to need an API, because you got to pull that data in, right?
Yeah,
and
I've
met people who built unbelievable world-class internal systems and never thought about connecting it to any of the other systems that you could buy.
Yeah.
So
gentlemen, if I could interject just really
please.
briefly, just as a housekeeping matter for participants, a reminder, we have a Q&A section of this Zoom call, so please take advantage of that. If you have any questions, I see that there's not any there yet, but that'd be great. And I'm going to go ahead and tee one up for both of you, Jim and Fred.
Sure.
And you can answer it now or later at your convenience. Like, one of the things that just struck me is you're giving a lot of great guidance here. I personally, and perhaps others would love to hear, what would be some specific recommendations in terms of implementation of AI? And if you can, make it as use case specific as you can. For example, is it an outbound call center or inbound? Because they have some different kinds of issues there. And also, what would be a good example of low hanging fruit from an ROI perspective for integrating AI into the call center?
Yeah, I think we're going to get into some checklists, about what to look for, things like that. But
actually goes right into your next slide. I'm sorry, goes right into go to your next slide, because your next slide is actually going to answer some of these things. Fantastic. I think it's fantastic, because think about this. Here's the myth. Everybody believes, and I'm gonna age myself, unlike Fred, who's young, but Jerry, you're like me, right? Okay, it's not Ron Popeil's rotisserie. It is not set it and forget it. And everybody in this world thinks that. Plug and play, bullcrap. It's the biggest lie in the industry. 80% of any implementation is on change management. Yeah. The technology is 20% of the whole freaking project. But everybody focuses on the technology. And to recap what Fred was saying, this process redesign, here's what I can tell you. I'll probably offend somebody. If your data sucks now, it's going to suck even more with AI. You really gotta structure to make sure all that stuff is correct first during that process before you even get into it. The second thing I would tell you, because I've done this myself. So the low-hanging fruit, you would be amazed if you don't involve the frontline people when you try to deploy this to tell them you made their job better. It didn't make their job. It made it harder because you didn't realize what they were doing, right? And then when you think about training these models, I actually have customers, believe it or not, who still take calls to reset passwords. And the main reason they're doing it is because they have the technology they built internally can't do it automatically yet. So you have to fix those processes first. Then low-hanging fruit, easy one. Does this shirt come in blue? No human being should be able to answer in that call. It could all be automated, right? Those are the things I think about. The technology itself, a lot of them are about the same, so I don't knock anybody. Everybody has pretty much the same thing. But every deployment I've seen who don't understand the contact center business and those interactions already happening, that's why when you focus on the technology, when people come to me and say, yeah, I bought this technology, I've been doing it for 6 months, it's still not deployed. That's why, because you're focused on the tech. When you actually think about how it should work, which is the change management, the process design, understanding it, it'll knock that timeline down to 30 days. And this is true. This is a real business case for me. Then the adoption rate, the reason 28%, right, only adopt it is because you didn't involve the right stakeholders. When you actually bring them in and redesign your process, involve everybody, and I don't mean to be a dictator and say, this is how we're going to do it, but I made that mistake because I thought I was smarter than everybody else. I'm going to build this beautiful engine. I'm going to do this and I'm going to automate all this, but I didn't bring in all the stakeholders. And then when I went to deploy it, they were all anti-AI because guess what they all thought? You're just going to fire me. I know what you're doing. You're trying to remove my job, which is farthest from the truth. We're trying to make you more efficient. And the last part about it is these features. Everybody talks about features. It's the old, it's no different than when you're selling into the B2B world. It's actually benefits. What is it benefiting me? When you talk about features, well, it's got all of these things, and these companies try to sell me all the time. It does this. Good. Give me a use case for it. Well, no, it's going to be great. What does it do? Our guys say this is going to be the future, but you haven't given me a business case. So you buy these features that you may or may not need. I have a belief in my world, crawl, walk, run, which we're going to talk about later. But just because it has 100 features, what are the ones, what's the low-hanging fruit that's going to get me a quick ROI? That's what I have. And Fred, I'll pass it to you and get your thoughts on what I missed.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, 80% of any implementation is really change management, let alone AI. I mean, what you mentioned about the fear on the floor, I mean, we've been doing, I've been involved in contact center technology change for over 20 plus years of my contact center, my 30-year career. And every one of them should always start out with, a selection committee involvement, talking to your agents, talking to your supervisors. This is all part of change management, right? But many companies forget the baseline fundamentals, and those have not changed with artificial intelligence. We've just added some. And the severity in which and criticalness of collecting the processes and making sure your data is in place and putting your house in order. And that's why we built over a year and a half ago an AI readiness assessment and consulting practice. Yeah, this is no shock that a lot of the projects and POCs fail because, quite frankly, people are not ready to take that next step. But to answer your question, Jerry, yeah, the low-hanging fruit, and this isn't me just talking up Jim because he's here, but conversational analytics is a no-brainer. If you've got a decent CCAS tool, you can plug in as long as you're doing, 16-bit or I should say stereo audio for everybody else. Meaning that the agent channel and the customer channel are separate. You can get high accuracy out of today's modern tools. And the visibility and insights and the ROI on that is a no-brainer. That's an easy one, right? There's orchestration technology for the back end. And everybody wants to talk about agentic, but you again go back to Jim's point, find use cases. Solve for the stuff that no human should be doing today because it's just silly. But none of this stuff, you don't just plug it in and it works. I mean, that's just the bottom line. All of this stuff takes training, tuning, time, effort, resources. But if you haven't done the work in the change management side of your people processes, the technologies, you're going to struggle. If you remember, who was the analyst firm, Jim or Jerry? Do you guys remember who put out the 90+% Gen AI projects fail to return ROI? It was a couple of months ago.
I don't recall that, but I do
I
recall.
don't recall it. I remember. I do remember reading it.
I just don't remember the analyst firm.
Yeah.
Anyways, what made me laugh is all over social media. This was that clickbait of that just that headline, right? If you actually read the article, you found out that 2/3 of all point solutions specifically designed to solve particular problems were actually showing a return on investment. So everybody, so this technology works. It is here. I tell everybody, don't die on this hill. Don't fight AI because they'll find executives that will, and they'll bring them in. So you got to figure out, how to properly adopt and put the right things in place to make sure that you're successful.
Yeah, I just did a use case for a potential customer I'm working with today, and I analyzed his calls. So talk about speech analytics. I said, drop me 5,000 calls. He did. We put him through our models, went through and says, man, it's a sales program. Easy. Sales is the easiest ROI, by the way. I said, you can get a 2% lift all day long just by listening to all your conversations, given this data. He says, so your technology, when I deploy, it's going to give me a 2% lift. I said, no, that's not what I said. He's like, well, I'll sign today if you promise me a 2% lift. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll do it for you for X if you commit to taking the data and taking action to the data. So what do you mean? Just because I tell you what's wrong, you still got to fix it. And he's like, I said, the technology is not going to fix your people. We're going to tell you what needs to be fixed, but your managers, your leaders need to fix the actual core problem. Oh, that makes sense. Because, they think this machine is going to just solve all the world problems like the old days sliced bread. No, the technology is going to tell you what needs to be done, who you need to coach, what you need to coach, how you need to coach, but you have to execute the coaching. The machine's not going to coach the agent. The machine is going to tell them what they need to do. So anyway, I hope that helps as well.
If we can, let's drill down a little bit into conversational analytics. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we still perhaps have a human being involved. In other words, it's not conversational AI. So you still have a contact center employee. And let's say it's an inbound contact center where you've already covered PII because you've already done the preamble saying it's going to be recorded. So let's not worry about that. So you're recording every aspect of the conversation. You're getting sentiment analysis and things like that. Talk a little bit about some of the post-processing things that can be done. In other words, the call's already done and you're analyzing the data later. And then also talk a little bit about some of the real-time things that could be done as a result of that.
Yeah, so I'll talk real quick about what we're doing at in our call centers. So we've reduced handle time at least 60 to 90 seconds off each call by summarizing the call using contextual, not freaking ChatGPT, by the way, and then dropping those notes. So now the agent doesn't have to put the notes in. It's actually going into it and saying, here's the notes, it's dropping them right into Salesforce or the CRM. That's a game changer for AHT. Why? Not that we should worry about AHT, by the way. I have a blog about that as well. AHT should not be a metric, in my opinion, okay? Because you should take care of your customer and they won't call you back. But if you think about what you can do is now you've got that data, you've summarized it, agent can look at it. I call it human in the loop. Because by the way, if anybody's telling you transcription accuracy is 93% or whatever, yeah, so what? Anybody can do that. It's the context out of it. So it does hallucinate like anybody else, or like we talked before the call started back in the 80s, we all hallucinate. The machine hallucinates. So you have a human in the loop who can actually make a couple edits, boom, upload it, and it's done. As far as your question about in real time, what we're seeing in real time, our agent assist. So if a customer comes in and says, I'm looking to buy this phone, for an example, let's just call it the iPhone for sake of argument, it can actually give you in real time some benefits of why you should be going to this, which think about the old days. I started my career as an agent. I got a binder, 40 freaking pages. I'm not going to remember everything. So based on what they said, it can actually give the agent a prompt of, based on what it heard their issue was, it can actually tie that benefit to the issue. And now you focused on that instead of, like we talked about earlier, reading the feature set. Those are two that I have off the top of my head that are very powerful in those worlds.
That's great, Jim. Thank you. How about you, Fred?
And Jerry, real quick, it's not just human agents, right? We can actually monitor the AI agents.
Yep.
And this is all advantageous for training, tuning, both in the humans and AI. I mean, when you think about, AI agents, they still, if you treat them or think about them as an employee, although they're an employee that can scale, significantly more than a human, you still have to do the fundamental things. You have to teach it, you have to train it, you have to tune it, you have to ongoing, and you get the advantage of monitoring all of the information and insights.
Right.
This is something that a lot of people fail to really leverage. They think it's cool, and then that data sits inside the contact center and they never send it to the executive or the marketing team or the product team. This is where, full loop. I mean, what I've been hoping for is AI would break down the silos in organizations and really get everybody starting to work together. So far, I've just seen more of the same. A lot of silos,
Yep.
IT's building stuff. But there's so much value in just one piece we're talking about, which is conversational analytics. And it's conversational because it's not just voice, it's emails, it's SMS, it's chat. You can analyze any form of communication, WhatsApp, whatever. So there's a tremendous amount of value from the insights.
And I would say one thing before we go to the next slide. The one thing I would caution people on is letting marketing, I'll probably have said some marketing people, marketing shouldn't be creating your bots. You know who should be creating your bots? The conversational analytics. You're sitting on the largest data set in the planet, which is 1 billion interactions. Why would I have somebody from marketing or somebody in IT tell me how the bot should go? You already have the data. And that's where if you've ever experienced, I've experienced some crappy bots. When we're out here going, representative. You're doing that because the idiot, sorry that word, but the person who actually programmed it was probably sitting in his desk with all of his lights off in IT. And yeah, I own IT, so I can have fun with that. Never took a call a day in his life, and he's telling you how you should have talked to your customer. And I see that mistake all the time. So hopefully that answered you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Let's proceed to the next slide.
So some of these things, we talked about regulatory considerations, right? These are your non-negotiables, right? I won't bore you. We're going to send you guys this slide out, but this bias detection is getting a lot. So remember, biases are, so I think the other thing people think this, when people talk about machine learning, right? Everybody thinks it's about this set it and forget it. And again, I'm old. I talk about Rumpelpel's rotisserie. But like set it and forget it. The reason that bias exists is because it's the person who programmed it, right? That's why I feel comfortable. I'll tell our customers, I'll come out of the gate in 30 days, guaranteeing you 85% contextual scores, which is best in the industry. A lot of these models that people are plugging and playing, they've been trained on the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and YouTube videos. I don't know the last time you guys watched a YouTube video. Have you seen some of the millennials and Gen Zs, what they're talking about? That's what's training your engine. So that's why you have a bias, right? Compliance is real good. Like, compliance, like I have customers that want to do 100% interactions, which I agree when it comes to compliance, right? But real-time notifications, if somebody, and I built our models to say, I actually have one that comes in and says, promises made. And when I demo to a customer, it's like, what's that? This is telling me what the agent promised they'll do. So number one, if they said your bill and you're in a telco and they said your bill's not going up, it's a lie. It's not going up for 90 days, so we're clear. Number two, if I said I'm going to go do this to your account, now I can use the AI to say, hey, I told Fred I'm going to give him $100 credit. The machine can actually go into the crediting system to make sure that Jim applied the $100 credit. That's real-time stuff, which is valuable, right? And then when I talk about integration requirements, simplicity, right? Compliance reporting is important because compliance is getting harder and harder. There are people out there that do nothing all day long but try to sue companies and get class action suits. So let's make sure our agents aren't putting us at risk. And Jerry, the one that we helped with you, we know that was, listen, they swore to God that these agents were terrible and they were literally trying to steal it. It's not true. It happened 4% of the time on 2.4 million calls, right? And then of course, and then of course the implementation. Be realistic. Everybody sits in a room, and I've been there myself. Everybody wants to solve everything. No, pick three things that keeps you up at night. Let's start there. Let's get an ROI, and then go to number 4, 5, and 6. That's what I have to say on that one. Fred, what do you want to add?
Yeah. If your job is not implementing technology, bring in experts. That's what I'll say. I mean, this will be a great takeaway for everybody. When you're selecting technology, it's not enough to ask, I mean, do you have APIs? I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. You got to understand, there's multiple different types of APIs. There's, gets, puts, there's all kinds of interactions. And when you're talking about voice in particular, and if you're down the path of doing conversational voice bots, or even chat bots for that matter, little non-error handling, little errors in APIs can actually cause significant amount of latency is what I would call it, but lag in the voice. So when you get on and you hear that you're talking, you hear that lag while it's thinking. Some of that is due to bad integration. Some of it's due to bad bad data. Some of it's due to just a bad design. These are all things you just got to think of when AI doesn't take away any of the compliance rules. Find experts.
Yep. And Shelly has a question out there. We'll answer it live. So Shelly's asking, I think what she's asking, please verify, Shelly. You're saying use a Pareto chart to pick your top 3 measurements. Is that what you're asking us? Because if that's that's the way to do it. So I'm using Pareto charts to actually say this is the most of the 3 things. Yeah, agreed 100%. So we actually have that built into our platforms. That's what we're doing. We're doing the same exact thing. So instead of being in a room, Shelly, I love this because instead of being in a room, I think it's this. I think it's this. Yes, you have the data. These are the top 3 things that's going to move the needle. Hopefully that answered that one. Agree 100%.
Thank you, Shelly.
Thank you.
Well, one other thing I'd like to add just real quick is from a compliance perspective is how about the outbound contact center use case regarding specifically robocall mitigation? And one of the things I think about a lot and I play in this world is, some scripts involve pre-recorded audio, and of course you're supposed to have consent and you're supposed to honor opt-out and do some sentiment analysis and things like that. So how does AI play into all those things?
Well, that's a great one because we talked about this, I think, the other day. It's funny what people think that I can use it for anything. To your point, you need consent, right? Or opt-in or an EBR. We all know that. Mm-hmm. I know people want to use it. I hate it, which is why companies like Cloak and everybody else is out there to scrub your numbers off these databases. I get on average, I have more. If I pull up my phone right now and I go to my voicemails, I have 11 from today of robots calling me. And by the way, in case you guys don't know this, I got one today. Jim, we've read your articles and we want to sponsor you on Bloomberg TV. That's the biggest one I'm getting all week. I've gotten 5 different messages from Bloomberg today to be their guest. We all know what they're trying to do.
That was a text message?
No, voicemail. So I have all the numbers blocked.
Right.
And it was Bloomberg, supposedly, whatever, right? But that they're doing it. But my phone, because it's not in my contacts and because I'm using some type of spam filtering systems, it's going right into my voicemail, but they're leaving voicemails. I got 4 of them in the last 48 hours, 4 different people all telling me the same thing. I'm not a big proponent of outbound spamming people. I've never have been. But I don't know what the implication can be, because I guarantee I won't be able to track the phone number down, because what they're doing is changing their phone number every single time.
Yeah, of course. And let me rephrase the question, because I'm not talking about the true black hats, because they don't care. They're just going to do what they do. Everything you just said, I totally agree. I'm talking about a legitimate call center, legitimate BPO that wants to stay within the bounds of regulations. So, for example, the Federal Trade Commission's telemarketing sales rule says that when you use pre-recorded audio, you must have consent. So if you place a call and somebody says, stop calling me, you don't have consent, use AI and conversational analytics to deal with that. Another one might be, and I think the car warranty is a good example. The reason those were illegal weren't because they weren't selling car warranty. They were illegal because they weren't saying they were with Ford Motor Company and that type of thing. So could you use AI to monitor that compliance for those entities that are relatively good guys, let's say the gray market, perhaps not the black hats?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, none of these, I think I said it earlier, none of these laws went away. I mean, we still have to follow all the TCPA, the FDCPA for debt collections. You still have all the state regs, all the do not call. I mean, look, nothing's changed in the way that we behave. What we do know, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's over 10,000 laws between state and federal that are, it's insane. I mean, it's insane how many potential regulations that could be coming out, which is why, ECAC is so important, not talking to our own book, but yes, 110%. And
100%.
Most of the outbound designed AI tools are all built in with the compliance rules. But they're still dependent on the right, the right data, information, right? To understand, where you're calling, who you're calling, that you have permission. You still have to follow all the regs. Look, if it's an inbound or an outbound call and you're using AI and it's recording, you have to notify the person, period. There's class actions about that. Somebody built a bunch of bots on inbound and forgot to tell the person, hey, this call may be recorded for quality assurance and training purposes.
Wow.
So the regulations haven't changed. The tools can make you better, more efficient, but it doesn't stop the bad actors. But it does help and provide some of the automation, some of the tool set for the outbound. If you're looking at good solutions that are built specifically for the outbound process.
Here's an interesting one for you, Jerry. I have a customer that does collections.
Mm-hmm.
We built a bot for collections. I'm allowed to call you because you owe us money.
Mm-hmm.
The bot collecting 40% more money than the human agents.
Interesting.
We analyzed it. You know why?
No.
After analyzing all these interactions, when you're talking to a live person, and we all know, and I'm not knocking about collectors because I know how they are. Not that I have ever had collections, but I know how they operate. The person is pretty much, when they're talking to the bot,
they're very rough.
They're rough. That's a good word.
Yeah.
Much better than would have pulled out of my butt. But anyway.
Jerry, you're deadbeat. Just pay this before the law comes after you.
So what we're finding is that the person is more human, saying, You don't understand. And they're giving you all the reasons they can't pay it. The most I can do is $5. And the bot is trained incentive based because you could train a bot just like an agent.
Mhm.
And you know what? I understand. I'm going to go ahead and take that $5 payment now. And we're going to do that every week. And they actually feel more relieved.
To get that dopamine hit. That's interesting.
Yep. Interesting case study.
Yeah, definitely.
Next.
Okay, next slide.
So these are the 6 critical things. We won't bore you with this. These are just some things that you guys want to think about if you're deploying, implementing, or thinking about it. The audit trail, the bias detection we talked about. It's kind of like this is more of a recap. Compliance alert systems, remediation workflows, integration, and implementation. This is just so you guys take a picture of this if you want. When we send it out, we'll give it to you, but it's just basically the high level, the 6 things. Next slide. I have nothing else on this one. This was just a summary slide. So the next steps, right? When you think about this, if you calculate your 5-year total cost of ownership, I think Fred did an awesome job talking about this. Identify our next steps will be identify 3 to 5. If you don't know who they are, call Fred or myself. We'll give you unbiased information on who you should look at. Because that's it. There's so many people in the marketplace. It's the same messaging. You're all getting it. Revolutionary AI. We're going to be able to replace all your people. It's all marketing, right? You want to get the best of the best. Pick out 3, don't pick 1. Pick 3 to 5 people that you can actually go in and then do a pilot, right? Do a proof of value. If this company you're talking to won't do a proof of value, run fast, because that means they haven't proven it, right? And you want to set those guidelines. You remember the one I talked about a couple minutes ago? I have one going on now. He wanted to sign if I guaranteed him a 2% lift in conversion. I said, well, wait a minute, you got to do something too, because I can give you the data. And then 4, measure that ROI. If somebody's telling you they can reduce your spend by 30% or improve X by 30%, by all means, measure it. Make sure you're measuring it. It shouldn't take you 6 months to see ROI. Okay, you should be able to see ROI in the first 45 days. And last but not least, this is a one that I'm very passionate about. Make your decisions all based on data-driven decisions. That's where I think we get it wrong. I have been on so many calibration calls with customers who you hear this terrible interaction. That's just the way Jim is. Jim, like I screw up all the AI tools, by the way. The ones you talk about, sentiment, Jerry, you were talking about earlier, I blow those sentiment things out of the equation. You know why? Because every time it takes my voice, it says I'm pissed, I'm angry, and I'm frustrated. Actually, I'm not. I'm very passionate about what I do. Make your data based on data decisions, not what you think's going to happen. That's all I got on this one. Fred, do you have anything on this?
Yeah. The last time I made a buying decision for contact center related technology for a center of mine, there were really 10 competitors in the market. I went to Google. Actually I went to Yahoo because I was a Yahoo guy. Still have my Yahoo email.
That's old school there, Fred.
I still have my Yahoo email. Still use it. But there were 10. Today, CCAS alone, over 200 in North America. I've personally evaluated over the last couple of years, I'd say probably 200 to 300 AI providers, and haven't onboarded or partnered with 3/4 of them. The reality is this stuff is everywhere. We're all being inundated. I have a lot of empathy for the people in the market trying to figure this stuff out right now, because who knows, what noise is right. You got your IT team saying, no, we can build it. We want to build it. Of course they want to build it. That's what they do. They want to own that. They want to be the hero. And you've got all the suppliers and all this money being thrown around right now around AI. Every other day I hear of a company that I know or a CEO that landed their Series A or their Series D or Z or whatever we're at now. So there's so much noise. As you said, Jim, I mean, you got to take your time, look at data, understand what you need, I can tell you from a significant visibility into the amount of volume in our space, because I see deal flow, customers looking to buy everything from BPO to AI to any kind of tech. By far, the most volume right now is conversational bots, because still to this day, people believe that they can drop agents, with bringing in conversational bots, and the contact center and customer experience, unfortunately, for most executives, is still a cost center. So bring people in that can help you work through this. Give you the data, give you the information, have the insights. Just use resources that are readily available for you. You don't have to pay $1 million. Yeah.
Talk to the people. I think what you're saying, you can go to the next slide. Talk to the people who've been there. We've been there. We've all made mistakes. So to wrap us all up, we have a vendor checklist assessment. You can take that QR code if you want. We'll give you a free assessment, tell you where you're at. But listen, key takeaways, which we hope you learned today: demos. We've all been there. Demos look great. Put into production, right? The scaling barrier, this architecture breakdown, the data governance failures. I'm not going to read slides that you guys can read on your own, right? Remember, 80% of those investments is change management. We covered that. Structured frameworks. If your data is bad, work on fixing that first. If you need help fixing it, Fred and I are data people. We can help you fix the data. And then, the stakeholder adoption, that's probably one that's a pain point for me, because I think differently than other people. If you're following me on LinkedIn, you can see how I write. I say the things everybody's thinking, but won't say it out loud, but I have a problem saying it out loud. I failed to bring all my stakeholders in. When I built these unbelievable tools, I learned that firsthand. Had I brought them along the way with me, my deployment would have been much smoother. Instead of it taking me 6 months to 8 months, I probably could have would have been a lot better. That's a tough one. That change management, including all of them. And what Fred talks about, we have closed the loop processes now, but bringing all those people in that change management. And last but not least, my biggest one, I get on average 20 AI companies who just got their Series A or Series B or Series C, as Fred said, telling me that they're going to change my life. They haven't even done their homework to get a seat at my table yet. Crawl, walk, run. That's the methodology, I believe. ROI is there. Take a little bit and then keep moving it and going on. That's all I have for this. Fred, you got anything?
Yeah, you covered it, man. That's it. Really, in the end, it's all out there. Like you said, this stuff really does work. We are absolutely seeing ROI from products and solutions implemented today. That 90% is just not the case. That's clickbait. 90% failure rate. It's all clickbait. Understand, but it takes work. There is no silver bullet. That's the bottom line. So I think we're at the final. Any questions? Love to, if somebody wants to open it up, ask anything. Happy to answer.
And if not, I would encourage everybody to scan those QR codes. There are LinkedIn profiles. I think all of us put a lot of content out. I do not use LinkedIn to sell, so we're clear. I do have a newsletter out there. I put out usually about a 3,000 word article once a month, all educational. My goal to help younger up and coming managers. I remember as we all grew up in this space, I had Stuart back in the day to help me. You know what? There's a lot of information out there now. Feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. Look at what we're writing about. Educate yourself. I have a motto I tell everybody. Read an article a day. You'll be an expert in a year. So thank you so much for having me. We're opening up to questions if there are any. And I encourage you to connect with all of us on LinkedIn. And last but not least, if you're not sure about compliance, we all sit on this board of EAC. By all means, I think that we should do ECA. I'm dyslexic some days. We are very passionate about making sure that the companies are compliant to get rid of those Jerrys we talked about, which sucks my will to live every day. These people who don't follow the laws. I want to do business with people who are following the laws. That's all I got.
Was there
Fred, any final wrap ups for you? And I agree with all the comments that Jim said. And please do feel free to follow us all on LinkedIn. And then Fred, with your final comments, then we'll turn it over to Stuart.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate everybody taking time. I know everybody's busy nowadays. Those of you who are watching it, post off the recording. I mean, the ECAC, such a critical piece. For a long time, we had a gap in the space after PACE, where nobody was really representing us. And the fact that you guys picked up the torch and ran with it, I love it, and highly recommend for anybody watching to join, become a member, participate, or at least follow and understand, because we need people in Washington and at the state level, helping us out, because we're otherwise, God forbid regulators start making decisions without us making comments. That scares the heck out of me.
Absolutely. Ditto that comment. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Jim, and Stuart, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, guys. This was great. And to follow on what Fred you're saying is, our industry is regulated, and it's a non-ending regulation. They're always looking, because we're an easy target. And if you go back to the do not call days, the reason why do not call became such a burden on industry was they didn't have a seat at the table at the time. Yeah. The ATA back then didn't have this advocacy push that we eventually turned into PACE. Now we're doing it again. And most of us are volunteers. I mean, we're passionate about this industry. It's given us a good life. We've made, most of us have been long careers in this. So we need more members, and we need you to join. So we'll send out the recording. And for those, this is a message for those who are going to read this or watch this because they weren't on live today. Please, we're going to reach out to you and ask questions about ECAC. There's a lot of important stuff between AI regulation, data privacy regulation, and there's still the TCPA and TSR stuff out there today. So anyway, thank you guys. Appreciate it. And we'll give everybody back 6 minutes of their day.
Thanks, everyone. Have an awesome week.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.